Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LO3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, March 2nd, 2019. So let us begin. Thanks for tuning in, my friends. Yes, it's a beautiful day in the heart of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm running along the New River, hanging out by the park. People walking their dogs and going to do a little Mardi Gras style thing in Fort Lauderdale as well. However, I'm looking at the other elements and what's going on with the crisis in Venezuela. Of course, you have people picking sides. You got folks out there that support U.S. intervention, etc. And just to be very frank, I'm against intervening, foreign entanglements. But I am not a fan of government, Maduro, etc. It doesn't matter. One of the areas I noticed too, because there's certain things that are claimed to be happening down there too, even with some of the Native Americans, Native Venezuelans, the Indians themselves, and the Pemon Massacre. And this came from the Pan Am Post. It says here, Venezuela, why was the Pemon Massacre ignored by mainstream outlets? I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about some of the areas where there's merit on why this is possible. Always observe responsibly as well. So we'll just start from here. It's by David Unsworth. It says that the Venezuelan military opened fire on indigenous Pemon people near the Venezuelan-Brazilian border last week. The incident was largely ignored by the mainstream media. It says here, the international media is generally eager to report on stories involving indigenous populations who are being discriminated against or abused by the powerful governments, multinational corporations, wealthy landowners, farmers, oil pipelines. So it's interesting, multinational corporations that Venezuela, they claim to be a socialist government. Well, maybe a taste of fascism in there if you can look at it, according to this article. The Standing Rock protests in North Dakota were a classic example of this. The incident pitted a Native American tribe attempting to protect their ancestral land against the alleged environmental ravages of the Dakota Access Pipeline, a massive project designed to transport oil beneath the Missouri and Mississippi rivers from the backing out oil fields of North Dakota to southern Illinois. The Standing Rock border protectors, as they were termed in the media, became a cause celebre on the left, despite a study by the Army of Corps Engineers found that no environmental impact from the project. Indeed, following Trump's election, the pipeline was completed in 2017 and has run smoothly since. Only due time. Hopefully that's not the case. Pipelines are generally the safest and most environmentally friendly transport of oil, but that seemed to no matter little to the Standing Rock protesters. Rights of indigenous people are a serious matter that has only become more controversial during the course of colonization, industrialization, and development of the modern nation state. In the remote Amazonian jungles of southeastern Venezuela and northern Brazil, the Pemon remain one of the poorest tribes of the South American continent. For anyone who thinks that the 20-year political project of Chavismo served to further the interests of the poor and weak, the Pemon represented a striking counterexample. They, along with several other indigenous tribes, mainly in remote eastern Venezuela, have suffered greatly during the 6 disastrous years of Maduro's rule. Despite the proclamations of an army of pro-Maduro propagandists who deem the humanitarian aid to be merely a pretext for military invasion, the Pemon enthusiastically welcomed the efforts of the United States, Colombia, Venezuela, in conjunction with British billionaire Richard Branson. He's that dude from who runs Virgin Airlines. Yeah, interesting chap there, right? Another Bilderberg attendee. To bring supplies of much-needed food and medicine into Venezuelan territory. When members of the Pemon tribe observed the Venezuelan military convoy speeding towards the Brazilian-Venezuelan border with the intent of preventing the entrance of humanitarian aid, decided to take matters into their own hands. In the southeastern Venezuela village of Kumaracupe, 40 miles from the border, they attempted to block Highway 10 and prevent the arrival of the soldiers. They were met with live ammunition from the Venezuelan military. The first victim was identified as Zoraida Rodriguez, 40, who died of a gunshot wound. A second as of yet identified victim died later at a local hospital. A dozen wounded were also taken to the hospital. One man, Alberto Delgado, spoke forcefully about why he came to protest against the Venezuelan military and how the Chavista regime has impacted his life and that of his family. I did this for my grandfather, who has been sick in bed for 6 years. I did it for my uncle, Jorge William, who is in a wheelchair. I'm doing this for my uncle, Capriano Lopez, who is doing dialysis every week, and we have to spend money. I was shot in both legs, and I hope that all Venezuelans see this. The only person responsible is named Maduro, and he has to leave out. We're going to get this criminal out. For those Democrats in Congress who refuse to label Maduro a dictator, perhaps they should speak to Alberto Delgado and the members of his tribe. Maduro and his disastrous policies have brought ruin and misery to Venezuela's largely urban population, but they have brought utter devastation to Venezuela's indigenous people, who are now dying for lack of food and medicine. To blame U.S. sanctions is erroneous. Sanctions have targeted a corrupt mafia like Inner Circle Maduro and his cronies, not the Venezuelan people. Venezuela is still able to sell its oil. Now the accounts must be controlled by the legitimate interim president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. And there's some controversy with him as well, possible CIA operative. This is all, claims, and I will continue on here. Regarding the dead and wounded, regarding the Pemon indigenous massacre, regarding the death and destruction for Venezuelan populations, where is the international media? This should have been the biggest story of the weekend. Rather, it was largely ignored by the mainstream media beyond outlets traditionally supportive of the Venezuelan opposition like Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, and the Miami Herald. Maduro claims that there is no humanitarian crisis. Maduro claims that he and the Bolivarian Revolution has done wondrous things for Venezuela's indigenous people. Maduro claims that there is no massive exodus from the country. He employs an army of propagandists, sycophants, and ideologues, even in the United States, to repeat these preposterous lies. Let us not forget the Pemon Massacre, and let us hope that these people who bravely confront the communist dictatorship have not died in vain. So it's interesting about that, and that's why I'm not really too surprised with these stories, because we got to look at things across the board. And some folks assume that I'm siding with Maduro. I'm like, absolutely not. I see some areas I'm not impressed with. It's not an open free market society, and they try to say capitalism is bad, but how come that you want to see people have their own businesses? Well, sometimes price controls, of course, fiat money affected the nation as well. The central banks aren't 100% innocent because they have been hijacked since 1939. A la Federal Reserve of the United States. Okay, just give you an example. So I'm going to continue on here in this article, and it's from the American Thinker, and this is a real good article here, and it came out on the 23rd. Where is the less outrage for Venezuelan dictator Maduro's slaughter of Indians by Monica Showalter? As the Covington Kid incident illustrates, whenever there's an outrage seemingly targeted at an American Indian, you can bet the left is going to be right there denouncing the supposed perpetrator is sticking up for the Native Americans. Here's an old Mother Jones report that's likely to get the pub sued, waxing indignant about a phony claim of students taunting a Native American Obama elder. Mother Jones slathered the white guilt on thick. Meanwhile, white-as-snow Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, who played an Indian in the affirmative action describes to gain Ivy League teaching post, now loudly claimed to champion Native American causes. It's an old weepy thing liberals have about Indians, and the Indians, I know, find it disgusting. Yes, most Americans of all politics have goodwill for Indians, but there's a reason the Cherokee Indian doesn't provide DNA samples for just anyone to test from to claim Native American ancestry. Indians hate this stuff. But there are real crimes committed against Native American peoples. All right, in this atmosphere, and zero surprise, it is works of socialists, which calls attention to a problem here, the left's double standard. And you have some points there. News headlines are reporting that 2 protesters were shot dead by Venezuelan troops and at least 8 were hit by gunfire as they came to the southern border to claim a shipment of aid from Brazil. Left out the headlines that people were Native American Indians from the indigenous Amazon tribe gunned down by the troops of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. Here's the account of what happened from the Caracas Chronicles. It all began last night. The Pemon indigenous communities gathered near the Venezuela-Brazil border, specifically Camaracape, Gran Sabana municipality, expecting to help with the arrival of humanitarian aid announced by caretaker President Juan Guaido for tomorrow, February 23rd. Besides Cucuta, Colombia, there is a other entry point of the humanitarian avalanche. According to another source at the site who asked to remain anonymous, this is a small town you know. The Venezuelan National Guard attacked the civilians with tear gas and pellets. They brought armored cars, shoot tear gas everywhere, something we never ever had around here. We took off running and we disseminated everywhere. Some of us reached the town nearby. Some are going to conflict zones, even on foot, wanting to help. This source is careful with words. I personally know Mrs. Zareda was killed, and I know of 8 wounded. It's hard to say how many wounded there really are, but all of this happened as a car crash occurred nearby too. So it's hard to say how many were hurt on the attack. The 2 things are clear. 1, the situation at local hospitals is so bad that many wounded had to be moved across the border for treatment. 2, the indigenous community indeed arrested military officers. Besides the soldiers Perez mentioned, our anonymous source claims a general is also held. Things are very, very tense around here now. I spoke to the captain, the way the Venezuelan indigenous communities refer to their chiefs, Yumbencio Gomez, and he personally confirmed to me that General Jose Montoya and 2 of his bodyguards are being held. He also tells me reprisals seem to be on the way. They know of 3 military convoys that already crossed El Callao about 3 hours from here to reinforce their units. So this is an interesting story here. I'll keep on going. That's a massacre, a classic massacre of Indians of the kind denounced by liberals. Apparently, the Indians weren't taking this blatant murder of peaceful Indian aid recipients lying down and took a couple of the Maduro-rights shooters prisoner. The Maduro-rights responded by sending in troop reinforcements effectively to keep the Indians hungry. One wonders if smallpox blankets are on the way. You notice that this is the kind of barbarism isn't being inflicted so far on the western border, which is where the Live Aid concert is going on, and the luminaries and political leaders, including Vice President Michael Pence, are present. Is going on just where Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro is confident no one's going to pay attention. Down in the rough and lawless South, where the Indians live, Maduro is apparently fairly sure the white liberals in the U.S. are going to have a double standard about Indians this time, so the socialist gunfire blazes away. So where is the liberal champion of Native Americans in this case? So far, I don't see any. Hungry Native Americans are literally being slaughtered by Madurites for trying to accept food from Brazil, and the left here is completely silent, with Jurassics such as Bernie Sanders rating on about the past U.S. invasion as the real problems, while liberals as this Bloomberg columnists are unable to extricate the question of aid from the dislike of President Trump, despite his quotes from an analyst who are helpfully trying to help him tell him Trump has it right. He's got nothing there about the Indians. Yet it is a bona fide slaughter of Native American Indians, and the same people who rush to defend Indians, no matter what in the states, are now weirdly silent about the targeting of them from the farther south. For the record, Indians have always gotten the short end of the stick from this hemisphere's socialists. They were targeted for special slaughter by the Marxist Shining Path guerrillas in Peru during the 1990s. They were targeted for murder by the Marxist FARC, which is F-A-R-C, narco-terrorists in Colombia a decade later, something the left kept blaming on President Alvaro Uribe, who put a lot of military muscle into defending them. There have been numerous incidents of abuses against the indigenous people in Venezuela, starting with socialist Chavez regime. Now it's come to outright massacres. Where is the liberal compassion for the Indians now? The Venezuelan socialist regime is now starving them. Not only starving them, but now killing them. The hypocrisy is showing. It's very interesting about that too, because it's been happening all across this Western hemisphere. Genocide, democide. And the truth of the matter is, my friend, we're standing on blood. It was just an example. This is not just happening in this hemisphere, but the entire planet. And I do find it's completely unacceptable. Genocide and democide I condemn with a passion, and I'm confoundedly proud of it. Because one thing for sure, government in Latin means control of the mind. I know I repeat myself to my consistent listeners out there, but the first timers should understand what government means in Latin. And this is why individuals like myself never trust this particular institution, because there's been history. On 20th century alone, around 170 million people were slaughtered by the hands of governments gone bad. We can go on multiple places. Like we could talk about what happened in Rwanda, the 100-day genocide or the 100-day Holocaust in 1994. We could even address what happened in Uganda, the hidden genocide from 71 to 79, the killing fields of Cambodia, etc. I can go on. And a lot of folks out there they really need to start paying attention. And don't get me wrong, there is a spiritual awakening. People are actually seeing the light, going on a principle instead of party and all that good stuff. So, which is nice. I'm going to continue on here. I'm on my phone right now because looks like some of my things have been compromised here. And this one here came from the Organic Prepper. Venezuela inmates are being released, uniformed, armed, and sent to kill protesters. Came out yesterday as well by J.G. Martinez D. Dear fellows, the title of this article is intended to alert what happens in a real crisis. Criminals have been released in Venezuela and given guns to shoot the demonstrators who are protesting against Maduro. There is another localized end-of-days event that is incredibly dangerous. The criminals that conform the band inside the government, Cuban-infiltrated and controlled institutions have opened the doors of hell itself. Anyone who has seen footage of what happened in the Venezuelan jails will understand. They released the inmates and sent them to fight demonstrators. They let the inmates out, give uniforms and weapons to fight against demonstrators. This is happening, and there are proofs of that published on the web by infamous Valera, prison minister. Over 25 murdered persons and over 100 injured, all done by gunshots. I'm not going to turn this article into a political debate. Far from that. I would love to make sure you understand that this happened. The possibilities of it's happening perhaps are low, but the consequences of such event are extremely high once it occurs. Of course, in the USA, there are far more possibility for a common homesteader to survive an inmate's attack if such threat somebody knocks at their door. Thank the Lord for that, people. But there is something I feel the need to enhance. The gangs are getting organized progressively on time. Their tactics have become more and more specialized. Even in Venezuela, where common criminals were not as tactically prepared as in some other countries, and a degree of organization has been increasing. And that, my fellows, is alarming. Occupying territory, setting up safe houses, instructing their members in weapon usage, using the shoot and run tactics, all of this part of the new semi-organized crime. It has to be deleted off the face of the earth. Don't ever underestimate the intelligence of such criminals. This could be a fatal mistake. What's happening, meanwhile, I am typing for you, is that there are criminal gangsters roaming on the Chinese small motorcycles that I have mentioned enough before, with the guys in the backseat armed in the numbers of 20 or 30, shooting to the civilians protesting for the negative of the usurpation mafia to let the medical supplies and food to enter. Last time I checked, the police themselves had burnt down 3 semi-trucks containing a part of the donations. So some claim is a false flag. I'll just continue on here. There are guys dressed in civilian clothes with radios, bulletproof vests, and AR-15s, often weapons without any identification, completely against our laws and regulations. And I will explain that too when I finish this. Roaming free with the power to shoot civilians if they feel like doing so. We don't know who they are, where they're from, but we do know that their directives are they are going to kill as many as they need and stay for as long as they need until the last person protesting ends up staining the asphalt with their blood. This is what they mean when they talk of peace. This is their version of peace: submission, subjugation, humiliation. Anyone raising their heads and rebelling will be shot. This is hard to assimilate, I know, but this is what is happening. There is no other way but to fight our way inside our country again. Even this is done with borrowed weapons. There are always inmates could get out of prison. There is a real risk of inmates getting out of jail in a crisis. Whether they are willfully released and armed or whether they make their escape, the possibility is of concern. If there is a major or minor issue in your location, it's up to you. What should you do if you live near a prison? But it should be a major concern for anyone being located at a tank car of a distance of any prison, any size. My suggestion, given the severity of the attacks of the roaming bands against unarmed people in the frontiers of Venezuela, the best approach in any instance would be using modern technology such as drones to keep good surveillance of the surroundings. Deterrent systems at the outside perimeter of our main homestead, 3 kinds of barriers, that sort of stuff. It would be nice to grow a lot of thorn bushes, very thick, around our place. If someone tries to get through, the only way would be with a large enough vehicle that would send clouds of dust visible hundreds of meters away and noise. Another way will be setting them on fire. If not smart, if you want to attack with a surprise advantage, some good caliber rounds, well positioned, and the threat could be mitigated unless the vehicle is well armored. And there are cheap and civilian-friendly solutions even for that, though. Check the modern drones that have a nice cargo capacity. Investing in some DIY kits is a great idea, or even better, to use that wonderful ingenuity that some preppers have to manufacture. Big boy toys, so to speak. You get the picture, right? If a gang armed to the teeth is prepared to receive some resistance, it is unlikely that they will be able to expect some threat from above instead of some face-to-face shooting. However, this resource, as useful as it is, has to be used with the most caution possible. Being fragile and expensive, therefore not so easy to replace, will be a con. Used wisely, very effectively, there are a lot of inexpensive alternatives, but I believe it's much better to keep that for myself. It is not a secret that the roots of our crisis are entirely artificial man-made. We did not have the needed means to defend against a totalitarian dictatorship such as the one that was slowly implemented. In our country, the gun culture is not as extended as in other parts of the world. Hopefully, that is going to change in the future. Good people have to be armed. Criminals must be shot. It's a simple equation. And I dare to tell this after almost killing someone with my SUV in an armed robbery attempt. I had my car not been strong and big, able to get over a tree in the middle of a desert road at 120 kilometers an hour. My family and I would have been murdered, no doubt about it. If you look for some information about a El Picure, Los Malditos del Tren de Agora gang, and have some patience, you will have a good overview of how criminals can reign in a large area. Just like Ozaga. I have been armed and able to shoot back. That road would have been much safer for quite some time. The situation at the border has had me with my soul hanging on a thread, to be honest. I've been the entire week with an eye glued to my screen watching everything. I can be proud of something. This scenario is exactly what we've been prepping for since 2007. General turmoil, lack of services, even internet and cell phones inability to leave the house for buying food and food scarcity. However, our estimation were way too low. Were way too low. This lasted for 6 years instead of 6 months. That was our planned strategy. That was the main reason we had to leave. My thoughts on U.S. intervention. Daisy says she's against the U.S. intervene, and I agree with her 85%. The political toll is high given our former relationship between both of our countries, and I would not like the world opinion getting to mess to stir up the anti-U.S. sentiment. Once the words and actions of your leaders have been noble and completely friendly with our population, and I mean President Trump, and with deceased Oscar Perez's mother sharing the podium. The remaining reasons for me not being 100% agree is that there are other components that will be very dangerous for the entire continent and can't be contained with our armed forces kidnapped and being the national shame that it is at the moment. At most of our political sphere favoring the spreading of those extremely dangerous groups. There is a strong relationship with world terrorist groups that make our inmates look like school kids that need some spanking corrective action. I mean Hamas and Hezbollah and all flavors of the Colombian guerrilla. These guys are bad. They truly hate the West. They have been fighting to impose their communist agenda for decades now. They are roaming free in Venezuela and our southern states, the richest in minerals and resources, and the worst shootings have been in the small cities nearby the mines. How many of them will be trying to pass through your southern border within the next 3 years with fake Mexican passports? Now that there's a commie like Lopez Obrador in the chair, why do you think that the first thing Cuban intelligence did was to get their filthy paws in our national ID system? It was corrupt, sure, but they took it over. They needed to issue passports for their agents. They had agreements to provide Venezuelan passports to terrorists from the Middle East, even arriving to the frontier with Brazil. What do you think that El Asaname, the man responsible for his direct threat, is now in Russia? Thank you. Thanks to all the people that have made possible for me to assist my family. I would love to hear your comments about this, preferably if comments are respectful. Polite is much better if we avoid a political issue and talk about prepping. as I'm sure something is still out to explain about what exactly is happening here. Blessings for everyone, people. Freedom is around the corner. That was Jose. He's a upper middle class professional, former oil worker. So it's interesting there. And you donate money, so I'm definitely going to put that on there. And it's good to know about these things, because it's been a dangerous world since the beginning of time, my friends. And what he's saying, it's been happening at other places around the world with higher gangs, which is tyrannically government funded, etc. Oh, and this is why I always get a little bit disturbed about firearms, about restricting the firearms and all that. And it's been proven in Venezuela, according to Article 324 of their own constitution, that nation is a police state. And as it reads here, only the state shall be permitted to possess and use weapons of war. Any such weapons which now exist are manufactured in or imported into the country shall become the property of the Republic without compensation or proceedings. The National Armed Forces shall be an institution of competence to regulate and control, in accordance with the pertinent legislation, the manufacture, the importing, exporting, storage, transit, regulation, control, inspection, marketing, possession, and the use or other weapons, munitions, and explosives. And these are the folks, the people in Washington, D.C. wants to do the same thing, and even in the state legislations as well. Okay? So don't get me this whole propaganda matrix, even if you're not those quack-ass groups such as Moms Demand Action, Enough's Enough, and March for Our Lives. You folks want tougher firearm laws? Go down to Venezuela. Let's see if you can survive there or not with your candy-ass attitudes, your Orwellian snowflake attributes. That is a fact, my friends. And you want me to believe the government's going to protect us? You're in la-la land, a total wet dream. This is why I despise people like that. They're treasonous individuals. And this is why I'm highly critical of the Venezuelan government. During the time of Maduro and all these little lackeys that bow down, protect us. We trust you. That's meek and unmeritable. This is why I'm highly condemn these particular practices. When the state owns the firearms and people can't have them, it's called a police state. To all you Maduro worshippers, with all due respect, prove me wrong if you dare. That's all I gotta say on that area. Alright, enough in that scenario here. I'm gonna do one more. And where are you? Okay, I've got to do one more here, and actually, came from the Organic Prepper once again, and oh yeah, I think I screwed up here. Oh no! It's mainly what's going on with Momo. It says here, it is not the internet that's dark, it's humanity. This came out today by Daisy Luther. Everyone is horrified lately about the stuff on the internet. The degrading comments from the vile point to videos that urge to self-harm. The internet is a cesspool that shows the worst kind of humankind. Pedophilia, hate, racism, sexism, rape, animal abuse, bullying, and murder are everywhere. But it's not the internet that is the problem, it's humanity. Children are urged to self-harm. Maybe. There's an ultra creepy Momo challenge, which is a suicide game aimed at young children. Some sick individually actually took videos meant for children and spliced in horrible, creepy instruction of how to kill themselves. With threats that a creature of nightmares would do for them if they didn't comply. The instructions like, go to the kitchen, get your mom's sharpest knife and stick it in your neck. 3 children are suspected to have died due to this vile, twisted game. I can't even wrap my head around the mind of a person who would do this. And there's a video on here too, on CBS 4 Miami, talked about this. There is some debate about whether this is real or whether it's a hoax, but if nothing else, it should underscore the need for parents to muzzle children to make sure that they are watching what their children are watching online. Then we have YouTube disabling comments on content that features children. They suspended commenting not because it say horrible things about the children, that they're ugly, stupid, etc., but because of pedophiles who make repugnant comments on the video. YouTube said Thursday it will turn off comments on nearly all videos featuring kids, potentially affecting millions of posts on the site, after reports last week that pedophiles were leaving inappropriate comments of innocuous videos of children. It will take YouTube several months to disable comments on all videos featuring minors. The company said it already started the process last week when it turned off comments from tens of millions of videos. Advertisers including Nestle, AT&T, and Fortnite maker Epic Games pulled ads from YouTube last week after inappropriate comments about children were unearthed by a popular YouTuber and media reports. At least one company, Nestle, was satisfied with YouTube's response and reinstated ads late last week. A small number of children which have channels which have videos featuring kids will be allowed to keep comments turned on, but they must be known to YouTube and must actively monitor the comments beyond standard monitoring tools YouTube provides. Turn off comments on such a large number of videos seems an extreme reaction, said e-marketer analyst Paul Verna. But the issues involve the safety of children, so it makes sense YouTube will want to act quickly, he said. As this is the tip of the pedophilia iceberg, there are chat rooms, child porn websites, site that wants to repeal laws against the sexual abuse of children, and sick, twisted mainstream sites that try to justify the abuse of and attraction to children by adults. The internet is a dark and cruel place. The internet can ruin your life in many different ways. You can be doxxed. That's when someone hunts down all of your personal information and posts it online. Maybe you use a pseudonym online and they find out your real name, your address, your place of work. Maybe you use your real name and someone finds out the names and locations of your loved ones, your kid's school, your parents' home address, your spouse's workplace. You can be the victim of an internet mob determined to ruin your life. Remember in January of 2019 when the boy from a Catholic high school in Covington, Kentucky was wearing a MAGA hat and a Native American guy got in his face and the internet descended on a 15-year-old in a fit of misplaced rage. Someone posted a 30-minute clip on Twitter or somewhere that made the boy, Nick Sandman, look like he might be smirking. Celebrities asked him to be named and shamed and posted death threats and offered rewards if someone got on the video and when hit a 15-year-old boy in the face. They wanted his head. It's fun, right off of Edward Bernays' playbook propaganda. I'll continue on here. But then it turned out that when the video was shown from other angles, the young man was actually shown remarkable courtesy and restraint, and the issue was the guy in his face banging on the drum right beside his ear. This was the real story, but the damage to Salmon's reputation was done. People unfriend you for your opinions. That happens to me. Don't worry about that. This article wouldn't be complete without this honorable mention for Facebook, the place where everyone feels justified to insult others and dress them down publicly. The place where someone you've been friends with in real life for years unfriends you because you voted for a different person than they did in an election. The place where civility went to die. Here are some crazy stats. 2 billion people visit Facebook on a daily basis, and 1 billion of those are considered active. The average active user accesses the site 8 times throughout the day and spending a combined of average 35 minutes per day on there. Sure, you can catch up with friends and family who are far away, but there's a dark side. Actually, there are several of them. Facebook actually experimented without users' consent to see if they could change their moods. When they got caught, they weren't really sorry for secretly manipulating users, but they wished they had maybe done things a little different. Or let's be real, they wish they hadn't gotten caught. People can be cruelly trolled on Facebook, and psychologists suggest that the website is a place where psychopaths and narcissists can run amok without any real-life repercussions. And then there are people who are moderate the website. An article recently appeared suggests that low-paid moderators suffered from PTSD from all horrific and hateful things that flash across their screens all day long. They smoke weed and work and do all sorts of things to combat the images and videos they watch. But the internet isn't ruining the world. Despite all these examples, a debauched internet experience isn't actually the internet. What we need to worry about is humanity. It is easy to blame all the awful things we're exposed to these days on the internet. But really, we're just peeking inside the minds of people now because the internet puts that all on display. The problem is that people think and act in these ways. People are pedophiles or animal abusers or racists or psychopaths or narcissists or bullies. The reality is we just see it now. Before the internet, there are still people who are pedophiles or animal abusers or racists or psychopaths or narcissists or bullies, but we are less likely to see it or learn about it, especially if they didn't live in our neighborhood. We weren't as likely to see someone proudly bully another person for their beliefs or torment someone with a different view, or say vaccinations for children. There's a website out there for everyone telling them they are acceptable no matter how deviant or downright evil they might be. There is a group for them someplace online where they can find like-minded deviants. Maybe that makes people more likely to act on their sick impulses or announce their twisted views of the world. Maybe it makes them find themselves more acceptable. But it doesn't cause them to be deviant or evil. They're already that way. Don't be fooled into thinking people are totally different today. The different thing today is that we have a window inside the dark and depraved minds of people. There always have been evil people, and there always will be evil people. If you're a person who believes we might one day live in a world without current amenities, it would be wise of you to remember this. If the internet was gone forever, the evil that lurks there would still be present. In Soko's book, Dark Secrets of the SHTF Survival, he wrote of the degenerate and sickening behavior of people who live right in his neighborhood. Those people were just waiting for their moment. With the internet, we've had a dubious benefit of a crash course into the minds of people. We should use that as a lesson if a life-altering disaster were ever to strike. As horrible as it is, it could be our advantage. It could be what makes us willing to accept the fact that, yes, there are really are people who are this bad. The problem in the world today is not the darkness of the internet, it's the darkness of humanity. And she's absolutely correct. That's why you always got to utilize the internet. Observe responsibly. Hey, parents should monitor their kids. Should have discussions with them. Watch things together. And you have your inputs and share and become the teacher and the rabbi for your children. You be the role model, not the idiot box, not the computer. That's how I look at it. And always observe responsibly. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media network. If you have any questions, comments, or if you send something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to Decorum, and we'll post all my footnotes, social media contacts, email addresses, on my Spreaker page, okay? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.